dolishing yunde gunge gemba senje gunge nyen jegun tamje kemla gunja to continue our Dharma discussions about meditation or path or practice. So today I will try to explain the different aspects of practice or meditation, even though all of them are part of our path or our meditation, but some some of them are method aspects, and some of them are wisdom aspects. Some of them are functions as an preparatory aspects of practice, and some of them are as in the actual practice. And the most important thing is that all of these are necessary, all of these are path, even though some of them might seem contradiction to each other, seemingly. And one big challenge that we face, especially the Mahayana practitioners and top of that the Vajrayana practitioners, is that there are so many techniques, there are so many ways, the doors of practice, and we might get confused. Not only that, but we might think like, oh, I want the best one, the quickest, the fastest, the cheapest, and we really stuck somewhere, doing not much but thinking and just looking the easy and the quick way, and we end up doing nothing. But it's not like that. We have to understand that all these are part of our practice, and also we have to understand that we have to move on. There are certain practice And also you have to understand that at which state, which path that one should really emphasize, and then eventually let go and move on to the next level of path. Because sometimes we don't emphasize, or we emphasize too much and we're stuck there, not being able to let go. So what I'm trying to say is that one difficulty is we get confused to choose, since we have many choices as in Mahayana practitioner. And second thing, out of our greedy, spiritual greedy, we want, or we wait for the best, thinking that I want to be liberated without doing much or putting much effort. And this is very danger illusion. It could be very self-deceiving. Not only that, but then sometimes you hear some teaching and out of arrogant, oh, I'm this kind of meditations, I only do these meditations, Four Noble Truths, Three Jewels, these are not my thing. You only don't think that you might also denigrate. This is very dangerous. So, as long as you don't see all the Buddha's teaching as the pieces of puzzle and saying that these puzzles I don't need that puzzle, that is a danger. We say that understanding all the methods as a part of full picture of enlightenment, and they complement each other. And that means you are going on the right path. Until it's difficult, and we always fall into the one extremes. So these are some important parts of our practice. Knowing all these are important in their own path, but at the same time also knowing where to focus. There is balance is very important. Balance as in general in our practice, as well as I was saying, that actually the nature of our meditation is nothing but balancing our mind. Or maybe you can also say the right tuning. There's a beautiful story from the sutra that there was one student who was a musician and came and wanted to practice meditation, and he was trying, but it's not working very well. So one day he came and asked Buddha, so what is the technique of meditation, the right way? And Buddha asked him, so you are a musician? Yeah. So how does that, I don't know exactly how to say it in English, there's musical instrument which is similar to like guitar.
Lute.
Lute? Yeah. Indian musical instrument. where does the bass sound comes from? How does the bass sound comes from your lute? And does it comes from making it too tight, tuning? Or is it comes from making it too loose? And he said that if you tight too much, it will be too high pitch. It doesn't make good sound, and eventually it might break down. If you let it too loose, then it's too low. So you have to make perfect tuning, not too high, not too low, and that will make very good. And Buddha told him that exactly. Now just use the same technique when you meditate. Not too tight, not too loose. And I think when you are being too tight with our mind, then we break down. Mind cannot take it. But then also when you are too loose with your mind, your mind is almost becoming energy-less. So from that metaphorical way, we can also say that right meditation is right tuning of mind. Now, for those who are practicing and studying and getting different kind of teachings, maybe we might be a little bit confused because even though, let's say if you are practicing foundational vehicle in general, shamatha, or if you are practicing mahamudra, if you are practicing mahasandhi, even though from the depth and from the depthness of the meditation, you can say that it's a different depth. But generally speaking, you will find the same, no matter what meditation that you are doing. Because if we ask and say, so what is our mind made of? So what is there's our component of our, not the conventional mind that we experience, but the nature of our mind, so it's the reality face of our mind. It doesn't really matter what practice you do, what meditation you do, it always comes down to these two things, because we are all working with the mind, right? And you can say that mind is made out of two things. Let's say mind is, so as we were talking about why we get confused, not knowing, and on top of that we impute something. And when you combine these two things, samsara happens. Now what we have to do is that we have to understand the reality of aspects of our mind. We can say ultimate truth. How to do that? We have to understand two reality. The calmness, peace, stable mind, stability, and the calmness is the one part of our mind. We can say it's a half part of our mind in a way. And from a half part of our mind is this clarity. And when you put these two things together, it becomes the original or natural face of our mind. So, no matter what kind of practice you do, actually all the practice are focused on these two things. Maybe some practice are more focused on this in order to recognize and develop the calmness of our mind, or in order to recognize and develop this clarity aspects of our mind. So when you have this calmness and the clear, and sometimes we also call luminous, and the peace, when you combine these two things, and this is the actually original or natural aspects of our mind. And because of that also, whenever we talk about the meditation, we always talk about shamatha or vipassana. Yeah? So you can see, shamatha means you're trying to discover and develop the calmness aspects of mind. And when we say vipassana, and we are trying to discover and develop this clarity, this insight, this wisdom aspects of mind. Now, when you don't have this stability, and when you don't have this clarity, and this is the source of our ignorance. Now, for instance, if you go back to our metaphor of snakes, if you look at that situation, why we make the mistakes, you see these two things. There's no calmness. Your mind is already rushed. Your mind is already very influenced by your phobia of snakes. And maybe you are not physically even also, let's say if you are walking very slow, it is very unlikely that you will be mistaken as a snake, but maybe you're walking very fast, or your mind is not paying attention, your mind is already thinking something else. So when your mind is moving, when your mind is not stable, when your mind is constantly consuming the informations, and when it's very fast, because when your mind is fast, you cannot go into the detail, you have to generalize. And because of that, there's no clarity, means you did not see the rope clearly, right? If you see the rope clearly, there's no reason to be mistaken that as a rope. So you can see very clearly that when our mind is not stable, almost the illusions, chances of illusions goes very high. And top of that, when it's not clear, yeah, unstable, unclarity equal to confusion. So now we have to go back. Stable and clarity equal to wisdom, or you can say seeing as it is, or you can say it's a way to undo this confusion. So now what I'm trying to say is that this mind is given several names, so those who are studying different kinds of practice maybe might get a little bit confused, because sometimes we use like a word like awareness, and sometimes we use the word bodhicitta even, understanding the reality is called ultimate bodhicitta, knowing this luminous mind. And sometimes you might hear it like Rigpa, awareness, and sometimes often in the pit instruction also use Kamalkishepa, the ordinary mind, in the sense that mind that is not alternated by any kind of mental fabrication. So in this context, ordinary means like organic, not the ordinary as something unimportant, but something mind that is not touched by any kind of pesticide thoughts. So all these are, if you look at, we are all trying to discover the same thing, but because of different contexts and because of a little bit different level, you can say, of meditating, we use different terms, and these are important to use different terms in the different contexts, because it makes more, even though the meaning is same, but it gives the one who try to practice a little bit of different approach to do that. So now, so mostly when we practice, whether you are practicing a session or as in the whole path in Buddhism, especially in the Tibetan Buddhism, whether you learn Lamrim or from the four different traditions, it's same. You always have some practice we call the preparatory practices. And then we always have the actual practice. So, for example, preliminary practices are mostly, it's a practice in order to prepare you for the actual realization. So, for example, if you are practicing the precious human life, if you are practicing general dependent origination, if you are practicing the karma, mostly these are related with the analytical meditations. So there's some kind of thought, that is some kind of contemplations, reflections, and slowly it's sending a message and convincing your habits and practicing impermanent and so forth. So it's important to focus on the preparatory practices at the beginning, even though it's called preliminary practices, but it is said that preliminary practices is preparing the soil if you are a farmer, so to speak. Yeah? It's a very, even though itself is not the fruit, but it is very important part of the, because imagine if you have bad soil and then you put the best seeds, it doesn't really matter, it won't grow up. And even though it's called preliminary or preparatory practice, but I think if we use the word such as like foundation practice, I think that's more appropriate. Because sometimes we disregard this is just preliminary practice. Yeah? And that's why even in the text they say that these preliminary practice are in fact more important than the actual practice, because if you have a good soil, if you have a good seed, then actually in the later you don't have to do much. If you don't have a good soil, if your soil is like wild soil, unprepared soil, and then even though you start pouring best seeds, sowing the best seed and pouring lots of water, it won't grow up. Again, the greediness plays a big role, because we think that, oh, I wanted to practice the actual as soon as possible, I cannot wait. Yeah? That's a problem. So this spiritual greediness is also spiritual greediness and spiritual sneaky sneakiness happens a lot, and that's a very self-deceiving, and we become a very impatient. Actually, I think if you like in the Zen practice, also we call it the beginner's mind. I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's quite similar to this natural, fresh mind, not altered by lots of assumptions and presumptions, like ordinary mind. In Zen practice, they say that practice or meditation is not like walking in the rain, where you can feel and immediately gets wet. It's like walking in the fog, because if you walk in the fog and you don't notice, you don't feel that you're getting wet, but each step actually you're getting wet, but you're not feeling it. And practice is also like that. But the problem is that I think we are impatient and greed, so everybody wants to just jump into the shower instead of walking in the fog. Because mind develops gradually, slowly, and this is how it works, the nature of mind. If the mind changes dramatically, in fact it's quite harmful. This is same, because if you let the tree grow naturally, then it's a natural tree, nice, it has all these qualities of how it's supposed to be. And then if you grow the tree artificially, it might grow very fast, and there's something wrong. Same with the mind. So what I was trying to say is that there's a preliminary or preparation practice that we should focus primarily, and then slowly move to the actual practice. And then in actual practice, there are many things, but it depends on what practice. If you are practicing from the Sudrayana's point of view, or if you are practicing from Vajrayana's point of view. And now the how to do it, like with the sequence gradually. It is said that there's three wells or the obscurations that kind of obscures or blocks our practice or meditation to move on. So the first obscuration is that ignorance, not knowing. And the second obscuration is doubts. You know something, but still there's too many informations and you are confused, not being able to have this full picture. And the third one, intellectually you know something, but still not changing because you did not take it as an experiential level. So these three kind of obscurations that comes in our practice, or especially in the meditation. So for example, not knowing the nature of our mind, which is clear and calm, is probably the first obscuration. But then we might study a little bit here and there. We might hear that, oh, nature of mind is calm and clear. Then still we might have lots of questions, doubts, based on my own experiences. Maybe mind is not calm because my thought is going here, that is happening, that happening. And now we might have heard a lot. For example, right now we all have heard this saying from Buddha to our root guru, but nothing changes because it's in a very intellectual level, and it's not. I'm still experiencing my mind as an moving, unstable, unclear. So that's why nothing much is changing. And to undo that, in order to eliminate these three obscurations, it is said that we call it the three insights or wisdoms that one should develop gradually. Wisdom that comes from study, wisdom that comes from meditation, contemplation, and wisdom that comes from the meditation. So studying, contemplation, and meditation. So these three wisdoms are like a medicine or antidotes towards these three obscurations. So through listening or through studying, one will get wisdom and knows that what is the appearance, what is the nature, and through that we will be able to distinguish what is illusion and what is reality, and it will eliminate the obscurations of not knowing. But even we study, we get lots of different information, and sometimes we just stuck on the words, and sometimes we misunderstood so many reasons, and sometimes and we have our own this strong duality, presumptions and assumptions. So it's not that easy. You just read and then you accept it, and you cannot still not being able to accept it. So you will have a lot of doubts. So in order to eliminate all those doubts, we have to do contemplation. So contemplation and analytical meditation is very similar. We can read some words, contemplate, and when something ups and down happens to ourselves, we contemplate instead of immediately reacting, and see whether when Buddha says for suffering, cause of suffering, and is it this suffering coming from origin or not, we can do this kind of contemplations. And we can do the contemplations on selflessness, lots of contemplations we can do. Now, the one in the text, it says that when you do the contemplation, it is very important that you also rely on the pit instructions. Because sometimes we just use our own experience and logic, and it becomes endless. And then if you get some pit instructions from guru, teacher, it will solve so many problems. So pit instructions are very important during that time. Now, maybe we have some information and studied some knowledge. We did some contemplation, but still it is in our conscious level, it is in very intellectual understanding level. So now you have to make that understanding transform into the experience. So normally we say that understanding, experience and realization. So when you do study, you will have some kind of intellectual understanding, and when you do the contemplation, gradually this understanding becomes a beginning of experiences. It's not just it is how it is a reality, something like that. So for example, impermanent, I can feel the impermanent, something like that. And then when you do the meditation based on this studying and the contemplation, and then this experience will also become your realization, and it will eliminate the obscurations of mere dry intellectual understanding. So it will turn that intellectual understanding into the real realization. And when you have realization, then everything changes. Your view is changed, your perception is changed, your outlook is changed, and because of that your reaction is changed, your behavior has changed. Because of that, all the result will be changed. It's very natural law. So these three things, three wisdoms. Wisdom of studying will not maybe when you say three things, it seems like the three things, but it's just one thing going through the three different processes. Starts with the understanding through the study, and then moves to the contemplation, becomes experience, and then goes to the meditation, which will brings the realization. And when that happens, at the studying level, you can say, I have a view, but this is understanding view. This view is not based on the realization. And when slowly this view moves from the understanding to experience and realization, and when this realization happens, and then we say, I have a view that is based on the realization, not only the intellectual speculation. That is very, very important. Because until you have a certain kind of experiential level and the realization, understanding doesn't really from the spiritual point of view, it doesn't really help that much. It's like understanding is just trying to accumulate lots of pieces of puzzle, but still you won't see any picture. You just pile of puzzles. And when you have a little bit of experience, and the realization is that you're putting the puzzles together and seeing and what the picture really is. Not only that, but actually if you don't have experience in realization, and if you just collect all these informations, sometimes it might also be harmful in a way, because you are not really screening. Imagine that you have 1,000 pieces of puzzle, but somehow you didn't know that this puzzle belongs to this box, and you add some other pieces of puzzle, and it will really make you go, because it doesn't fit in. No, it doesn't, because it's not a part of that. And similarly, when you don't practice, you don't know how to screen. And when you don't know what to screen, and so many information is coming inside, and they might be distracting and disturbing. Even because if you don't screen the information, because so many unnecessary information also will become. So getting the information is good, but also filtering the information, so to speak, is even more important. So until you have some experience in meditation, we don't have a filter, because we don't know what is necessary and what is unnecessary until you practice. And then also another way to look at is that we call it the intentional aspect of practice and the application aspect of practice. So that means that there are some practice you try to develop your intention, your motivation, and then there's for example, we say that practicing bodhicitta generally is like practicing intentional practice. And then through this bodhicitta, when you practice such as 6 paramita, maybe not all of them, but let's say like generosity, and this will become like application aspects of practice. It's also part of practice, and discipline, all these kind of things. And as a sequence, we have to focus those practice among this calmness and clarity. You have to focus first on the calmness aspect of practice, because if your mind is not calm, clarity is impossible. And when your mind is calm, clarity is almost natural. So this is the way we have to focus. If you focus on the clarity from the very beginning, then it's almost like trying to farm where you don't have a ground. And there's many different techniques of calming our mind down, such as just simple shamatha on breath is one way, or practicing the compassion, focusing on the suffering of oneself, suffering of other, and practicing detachment is a very strong calm aspect of, even though many people don't take it like that, because normally, especially I think in the West, when we say meditation, you like relax, but imagine why we are disturbed. Attachment. Attachment is the undercurrent thought of all the many of our mind's disturbances. Imagine like, I want to practice, no, I will drink a tea. See what happened? Attachment. I want to practice, oh, I have to check my email, or I should call him. No, all these activities which disturbs our meditation comes from the subtle, seemingly our friend. Yeah, because aggression comes as our enemy in a way, but attachment is a very naive, how to say, sneaky, we call it among the four maras, we call it the sons of gods. Sons of God. It means that they comes with very elegant, looks like a source of my happiness, but then slowly distracts you, manipulates you. So practicing detachment is also calming a mind, but in a different way. And of course, there's many disturbances that is caused by ignorance. And then even if you are practicing some practice that eliminates the certain kind of ignorance, is also, we can call, calming the mind. There's a beautiful metaphor in the pit instructions, and it is said that our mind is like a water pond. More you try to disturb the water, it becomes unclear. And more you let the water the way it is, it becomes clear. So more you try to alter our mind, it becomes more disturbed, unclear. So unstable and unclear, it has a very strong relationship. More stable, the more clear. More unstable, unclear. And as a result, attachment, anger, jealousy, all these becomes this thought chain. And one another aspect normally we call is that analytical meditation and resting meditation. So again, analytical meditations are more as the sequence is it comes first. So first you do more analytical meditation because it gives you confidence, and then as a result you rest. Even though we say, so almost like resting meditation is a result of analytical meditation. But in analytical meditation, you use a little bit of logic, thoughts, all these things. In resting meditation, there's not much doing. In analytical meditation, there's a doing, but good doing. So comparatively, you can say that Vipassana is more related to the analytical meditation, and Shamatha is more like a resting meditation in general. But even when you analyze, there is a resting meditation at the end. So you analyze, and you will come into the point where, oh, so maybe this is what it is. And then you stop analyzing and try to remain that certainty mind. And this is the resting meditation. So it's not completely different, but that's how we use. So if you're studying like Madhyamika, and then you have to do a lot of analytical meditations. Because our mind has so many layers of confusion. So you cannot just peel them in one way. It's like you have to peel them one by one. So analytical meditation is something like that.